Welcome to the second Kistler Biomechanics webinar. We are happy to see again that participants have registered from all over the world. So we thank you for joining us today. In case you missed our first webinar last week, we have Dominic, Jenny, product manager, and Florian Labort, business driver for Kistler Biomechanics, will be available after the presentation to answer any questions for our force plate systems or how you can access the recording of the first webinar. As for me, my name is Will Lehmann, not to be confused with today's presenter, Will Lindholm. I am the Kistler Biomechanics sales engineer responsible for US and Canada. So for today's webinar, this is the second in our series. It will be presented by Will Lindholm, who is currently a force plates for the past 6 years, assessing many athletes in a variety of sports in both professional and private training centers. Will describe how he collects athletes' data using Kistler force plates and MARS software, how he interprets the data, and how he then applies that information to his athletes' training program. Hopefully, at the end of this presentation, you'll have a better understanding of how we can use force plates for performance monitoring to optimize your athlete's strength and conditioning program. Before we start, if we could please ask everyone to mute their microphones. If they, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you have any questions during the presentation, you can write them in the chat feature, directing them to myself, Will Lehmann, or it might be under William Lehmann. Just put your first and last name with your question, and we'll try to get to it after Will's presentation. If we don't, we will answer them via email. So I hope you enjoy this presentation, and Will Lindholm, you can unmute yourself and take it away.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, you got it.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Will, for that introduction. Yeah, what I'm going to do is go over practical uses of force plates in the setting that I work in, which is not necessarily a laboratory, and how we can apply that information directly to our athletes in multiple areas, whether it be sports specificity, helping trainers with a rehab process, strength coaches, and anywhere between, and how we can apply the data we got in a simple manner to educate people who aren't quite familiar with all the data, and be able to apply it right away to get the best results for our athletes on a quick matter, so we can get our guys back to playing right away or increase their performance kind of right then and there. So it's a little different how I do things. It's not necessarily by the book of scientific testing, but it's just kind of a way I've been doing things, and there's some interesting things that I've found from it. So I hope you guys get something out of this, and thank you for all joining. The outline is basically we're going to go over the experience and timeline I have using Kistler force plates with the MARS software and my approach and utilization. Practical use of the software in regards to strength and performance training, assessment protocol, interpretation of data. Important thing is to educate the people who aren't necessarily involved with this stuff on a consistent basis, whether it be strength and conditioning coach, the athlete, the sport coach, the athletic trainer, and then in the consulting matter that I have is with just telling the strength coach what we're finding out, and I can leave and he can adjust his program accordingly, where I'm not working with directly with the athlete. Injury prevention, performance enhancement, and again, sport specificity and coaching modifications. I've experiences with high-level athletes from Olympians all the way down to high school and anywhere in between. And then just some examples of a profile, test comparisons, some case studies. A lot of it's going to be images. And right here on your right is one of the many profiles that I've created in the past, kind of breaking down all the tests that this coach wanted and using the data that they wanted from the test instead of using all the data that we get from these tests, and using different modules in unconventional ways. So my process would be to start at the top. So I assess the athlete, interpret and educate right then and there, what I'm seeing, and see if it correlates, whether if it's a golf swing or a baseball swing and seeing if the hitting coach or the golf coach is seeing the same thing, seeing what I'm seeing based off the data, because we're getting all ground reaction forces and everything starts from the ground up. So if it's not correlating with what they're seeing, I'm not a hitting coach, I'm a strength coach. Now, if it's something that has to do with my area or with the trainer's area, I'll educate the trainer to see if they're on the right path, returning a player back to play. And then if there's any red flags that come up, we'll go into injury prevention mode, then we'll modify the program, and we'll train or practice based on what we find and what we're assessing. Then we reassess and kind of just keep going in this circle. So that's kind of how my protocol works. So some protocols, I take the athlete through baseline assessment. They're all different. I mean, I always do stability tests because I think stability is the most important aspect to training. And then what sport and age and if they're injured or coming back from injury or performance-based or whatever it may be. Thinking outside the box a little bit. Then we identify major weaknesses in the movement that limit performance or may increase the risk of injury. Then we inform again, education is big. Then we break down the information in more detail. And we use that to influence but not limit to rehab, warm-up, training, or on-field training. Examples would be rehab is monitoring a jump progression in an ACL injury. Coming back from that, when you start to do plyometrics, monitor if there's any asymmetries or power production. A warm-up would be, say, a catcher, someone who's sitting in a squat position for a whole weekend playing 6 games of baseball in high school, comes in, simply does some body weight squats on a dual force plate. We can see if there's any asymmetries that we need to address before the training session begins. We're not training asymmetrically, and that could lead to some sort of injury. In a workout, this picture I have here, I'll just set the force plates in front of the TV. Volleyball player might come over, if her plyometric movement might be a repetitive counter movement jump. So we educate the athlete on what a jump should look like. Any break in the amortization phase needs to get eliminated, and power production. So she actually uses it kind of like a video game to do their plyometric work. So that's one example. And on-field, the golfer using it to make change with their swing, retest weekly, monthly, or before any transitional period, or when available. So here's an injury risk. As we saw, we did the single leg balance test, which we always do. We saw that there was a low anterior posterior amplitude. So there's a lot of movement, or a less movement in the anterior posterior than there's a high movement in the medial lateral. Significant break in the amortization phase of the counter movement jump could lead to possible knee, ankle, and hip instability or weakness. I mean, the knees would be breaking in because there's a lot of medial lateral instability. This could increase the chance of ankle, knee, or hip injury and decrease the chance or decrease athletic efficiency. And how this can relate to on-field performance. Again, we start with single leg balance test. Now we see the opposite: high anterior posterior amplitude and a low medial lateral. This would be a lateral athlete. So there's a high amount of vertical force and power on a lateral bound. So a sideward jump on a lateral athlete is producing more force and more power in the vertical direction versus being able to drive that power laterally. So there's elevation, and we want to see more lateral power and lateral force on a lateral bound, which we'll go over a little bit later. Inconsistent ankle mobility, ability to create what we call a ground angle, which is being able to drive off the inside of that foot and maintain that lateral force and power. This is a baseball player, so this could affect him in hitting, base running, and defense. If their first movement is up, then it's an inefficient movement. We need to increase the mobility and increase athleticism in that lateral direction by modifying the program. This is what a lateral bound is on the force plate. Something simple like that. We have the athlete load up. I have grip tape on this particular force plate, just so they're able to drive into the ground and without putting them at risk of slipping or anything like that, because a lot of these athletes are high investments, and last thing we want to do is injure them during testing. And when they play their sport, they're typically in a shoe that allows them to drive into the ground and create that maximum force and power in that direction, whether it be spikes or a basketball shoe or whatever it may be. So this is the skater jump in Mars, and this is a volleyball player who is a setter. So lateral movement is very important. As you can see, when we started training, her horizontal force was at 53% of her body weight on her left leg, so moving to her right. And her horizontal force on her right leg was 57% of her body weight, so moving to her left. As you can see, there's more vertical power than horizontal power. She needs to be able to, as a setter in volleyball, you're the one that runs on the outside of the court. You're trying to assist your tall players in the middle to spike the ball. So you need to be able to, cover ground in the lateral direction. So after 2 months of testing, this is where we got to. So increased horizontal force on each side, and then the power is obviously moving more in the horizontal direction. And as you can see, the blue line is horizontal, the black is vertical. The black starts up here because it incorporates body weight. So what we're looking at is more horizontal or more vertical or horizontal power and force after 2 months of emphasizing it in training, which allowed her to cover ground and be more of an efficient athlete. Now we're going to look at a squat test that we do pretty regularly as well. Just to see how an athlete moves and body weight. So with one force plate, we'd only get the red line. With two, we're able to get, as you can see down here, the left leg is the blue line, the right leg is the black line. And what we're looking for is any break in the counter movement, symmetry, the difference between these lines, and the breaking to push off ratio. So this is the breaking, and this is the push off. So what we're looking at is that upside down V, getting that break down here, and then this is push off. And see how it's pretty symmetrical there. So then we see another athlete, and there's a little bit of something going on with their braking phase, but it's still nothing that's alarming. We just need to work on some stability more than likely. Getting a little bit of braking left and right, but that's not too alarming. And we got this athlete who has a real hard time braking. There's a little bit of braking his left and right on the downward motion, then maybe they're uncomfortable going down and they shoot right out of that squat, as you can see how fast it was. So maybe we might want to work on something with this athlete as far as the downward motion, but again, nothing incredibly alarming. Let me see this. And as you can see, there's a major discrepancy in the left and the right leg. You're seeing pretty much no force being pushed into the right leg as they go down and up. It's their body weight shifts completely to the left side. So then we're going to do a further investigation with this particular athlete with the symmetry test. So we saw the right leg that doesn't have any force production is lot more unstable in the anterior posterior. The medial lateral, or the left leg, is pretty tight and balanced. As you can see, there's a big break. Well, we did the symmetry test. The athlete stood there for 5 seconds. Left and right leg are pretty symmetrical. As soon as that hip broke, you're looking at all left leg, right leg, back to symmetry when they went standing. Then we went to a full squat, and you're seeing even more instability or asymmetry back here. So you kind of see how these tests kind of correlate to each other, and then we're kind of starting to paint a picture with this athlete. Well, I was consulting at this time, so I didn't do anything with this particular athlete, but found out that he had a non-disclosed injury. There's something going on with his knee. The strength coaches and trainers did their jobs and did a great job, and this athlete turned out to be perform really well for that particular team. So that's kind of my ally approach to this type of consulting. I'm not coming in there and telling these strength coaches and trainers to do the jobs they're hired for. I'm coming in there to pretty much get the information and interpret it for them, and they can go in and immediately start working with the guy if they see the same thing that I do. So I don't work with the athlete. I'm not coming in there to train an athlete that I don't work with. And just let the strength coaches and trainers do their jobs. So it's pretty unique, and I enjoy it. And this is an outfielder, right ACL, returning to jump. So we're talking about the jump progression, how we do it in rehab. First day of jumping, again, you got the left leg is blue, right leg is the injured leg, that's black, and then the red is total. As you can see, is this bodyweight squat is having obviously a hard time breaking, which is understandable, but there's still a big asymmetry there. We got an overhead squat with a dowel. As you can see, the right leg is just not having it. The little bumps right there, you see those tremors? That's an instability on that side. So when you put the hands over the head, it even gets more unstable and has an even longer time breaking. And when we do a counter movement jump, this rate of force development actually looks pretty good. As you can see, the left leg and the right leg, this almost looks like 3 separate jumps. So what we're looking at is now, okay, now we need to get this athlete to feel like we need to work on the symmetry. And as you can see, the impact force from the left leg is way up here, and the right leg is way up here. So he's not really getting anything out of this right now. But again, it is the first day. So give this information to the strength coach, come back just over a month later. And yeah, you're still gonna see this breaking pattern be a little rough because it's an ACL injury and you're just starting. But as you can see, the symmetry is incredibly different. And as you can see, this impact force is right on top of each other, which is what you want. So now he's getting back to symmetry just after a month, but providing information to the strength coaches and the trainers, allowing them to do the great jobs that they do. And then moving on to having 1 force plate versus 2. Same thing, we did a squat with this particular individual. Healthy player, performing a mid-season assessment. And as we can see in the breaking phase, we see this disturbance, which means there's an instability. There's something going on with the breaking phase. So we added 2 force plates to this particular incident. Turns out that it was his right leg that was causing the disturbance. So what we did is ask the athlete if there's anything going on with the right side of his body. And of course, he's sitting there with the trainer and the strength coach and admits to having something going on with his foot. And we never went to the manager and the coach. So again, those strength coaches and trainers implemented their program and kept this player healthy so he could stay on the field. But he didn't want to disclose the injury in fear of not being able to play. But they addressed the issue and he played the rest of the year healthy. Now, this is a track athlete coming off a left ankle injury. Now this is athlete monitoring. So what we found here in the single leg counter movement jump is on the injured side, the left side is it's a track athlete that competes in sub 10 competition. So under 10 seconds for a 100-meter dash. So every minute, every millisecond, every tenth of a second counts, and as they produce force. His jump time was longer, and even though it's just 0.2, still is not applying force quickly and with that side of the foot. And as you can see, it's not the rate of force development on the right side is significantly better than on the left. Even the better picture is there, as you can see, the jump time, left side is blue, is longer. The counter movement time is shorter, which means he's just kind of dipping and trying to push off, but this push off time, he doesn't have the strength, and it's significantly higher than the healthy side. And time to max force is a lot sooner than on the left side, which means lower RFD, lower jump time, lower push off time. We want, for a 100-meter sprinter that's significantly powerful, we want these to be pretty even, and we want it to look like the gray. With a shorter amount of jump time, time to max force being quick. So you're able to produce force at a fast pace. That's how we monitor athletes coming back from an injury that are healthy enough to perform, but still need the strength coach to know it and explain it to the strength coach and the athlete for this matter. And they seem to understand, and it seemed to correlate with what he was seeing. And this is a high-level athlete, Olympic competitors. Now we go to coaching cues. This is an athlete, one of mine. He was just performing a regular squat. We did a barbell on this one. We noticed that there's a lot of instability on this squat. We don't even have to look at the values to see what we're seeing here. But at the bottom phase before push-off, he actually dips below his body weight and force. So the athlete actually stops pushing and then has a second push to get off the ground. So what we did is we cued this athlete to continue to drive through his feet. It's just a simple coaching cue. And then we tested him. So we see we got that little break, right? It says below, how much below his body weight of force is. We just use the information. And this was 30 days later retesting. So athlete's actually pushing off with more force. So you can see it's 1,050 newtons here, and we're all the way up to almost 1,300 here. And being pretty symmetrical, and we don't have that break in the amortization phase of that squat. So just a simple cue. There's nothing wrong with this athlete. We just say, all right, we need to cue this kid. We need to coach him up a little bit. Obviously, we couldn't see it, and then we just saw how significant it was using these devices. There's just some examples of Olympic level athlete doing a counter movement jump with the hands on the hips. As you can see, it's a load, and that rate of force development is significantly high, and the landing is great. Her first push off is 3 times her body weight, and she continues to push, and it's about the same as push off. Max power is 6385 watts per kilogram, but which I found is on the higher level. Anything above 60, 65 is, especially with a female athlete that doesn't weigh as much and doesn't jump too much as a hurdler, versus someone that trains with CrossFit. So they have a slow dip, slow rate of force development, and they actually push off, and there's a break in the amortization phase, and then they push off with less force than an initial drive, which tells us that the knees come in and they're actually If this kept going up, there'd be more force production and more power. As you can see, the power is significantly low. So there's two examples of how we look at a few numbers just to kind of paint a picture of what we need to coach these athletes on and get them better as quick as possible. Now, this is American football. So what we're doing here is the same thing as a counter movement jump, but they're doing a push-up, a plyometric push-up at that. So they're actually pushing themselves off of the plate in repetitive manner. So just push, catch themselves, drive. And these are two offensive linemen. And those of you not familiar with American football, they're the big guys up front that when people try to rush in on them, they're the ones that push off with their hands. They need to be able to recoil and continue to block this person rushing in to get the quarterback. What I did is I had these athletes do 6 power or plyo push-ups. So you're looking at the same thing as a counter movement jump. Right here is the initial push, and then this is a drive up. And they catch themselves here, initial push, and then drive up. This is a regular college offensive tackle. By the 4th push-up, there's a moment in there where there's no drive to continue producing force. So by 4th or 5th rep, he's actually getting weaker and is more susceptible to letting defensive linemen or whoever come in and beat him. Now, the next guy we're going to look at is a top 15 recruit. He's about 316 pounds and about 6'5". He did the same test. He's one of the best linemen in the country. As you can see, this is a lot different. He never loses that drive. He's consistent. So it's like doing the counter movement jump and just having no breaks. Pop, pop, pop. So you can see a big guy like that, it's a pretty significant difference in continuation and consistently providing force to the athlete. And we can do this during a training session as well. I'll just have a run and then do their upper body movement. Then this could be their plyometric movement for their upper body, and we can see how if they're fatiguing out quicker or if they're able to continue with providing that force. These are just some examples of, I'll go through this fairly quickly so we get to questions, but these are just some examples of how we use it in some sports, and this is just golf and baseball. So this is a swing. Simply, there's do a swing on there. We have the back leg load, and that's our front leg kicking in, and then that's contact point, and we want to see this nice sharp peak, and we need this force to be high because that creates the torque. We want this to be short and sweet. Go over this because it's just like a golf. So if there's a break in the back leg with this golfer from the PGA Tour, he's limiting the amount of force he can drive into the ground. So I tell him this, he goes to his PGA Tour hitting coach. This is November 16th, 2 years ago, and then this force contact on the front leg hits to create that rotation. It's 588 newtons. After 2 weeks, he eliminated that separation between the back leg and the front leg, and he's up almost 100 newtons, which is significantly higher and creates that torque. Increase body control, increase force production to contact. Now, this is interesting too. We did some fencers. We used the forward lunge module, and they simply did 4 consecutive lunges, like they do in every tournament they're in. They do it 100 times. After 4 reps, this amateur fencer averaged 5.5 times his body weight force, sheer force on that front leg. You do that over a course of a weekend, that's a lot of force going on that front leg. Kid had knee and hip issues all the time. And this is an Olympian who was able to control that force a lot better and was able to retreat a lot quicker and was healthy. So I was using a module in a different manner. They're just basically custom templates I make and using the values that the team wants, and I put these all on one page so they can kind of see how the picture gets painted. Or like I said, stability is huge for me. So if all I want to do is stability, we can compare the different types of amplitudes and the different types of sway path to all the athletes on one sheet. Kind of puts in perspective a little bit better. Quickly, just some tests I do with volleyball players. I'll do the body sway barefoot, but I'll do a repetitive counter movement jump, but I'll just have them do like a block, like they're trying to go up to block a ball, and I'll have them do a lot of stuff in their volleyball shoes. Just because that's what they jump in, and I think it's more applicable, more practical from my standpoint to see how they land and how they produce force in the shoes that they're jumping in 99% of the time. Just thinking outside the box a little bit. Real quickly, this is a towel drill. This is just a pitch. So we're just doing a pitch, and we're looking for how the back leg produces force. We'll look at the red line is your lateral force. As you can see, we want this good rate of force development. And then we want this vertical force to be just, that peak to be just under here, just so they line up together and they're producing force into the ground and toward home at the right amount of time to create that rotation. And we have this is a poor one. And he doesn't have great rate of force development, and there's no real force into the ground. Well, this athlete got injured. This athlete's a big leaguer. So then we look at the vertical forces, and as you can see, the same thing here. Applying that vertical force right under the horizontal, and then we have this guy having no vertical force. So on a lateral movement, there's no vertical force. They're just tipping over. So for baseball, that's not what we're looking for. For the sake of time, I'm going to kind of go through these fairly quickly, but again, this is why I do stability. How body sway can affect this particular drill. This is a left-handed pitcher. The sway path is below average. My average I've gotten over the thousands of athletes I've worked with is about 400 millimeters of movement. Anything below that is good. And above that is when you're starting to kind of get into that unstable state. As you can see, the vertical force and the horizontal force kind of, they don't have that separation. Well, after 1 month of really hammering the stability and the lateral force, pitcher's now double the amount of lateral drive, which is half of its body weight, which means you're putting more strain on the arm when you're doing when you're throwing the ball. Whereas if you gather that force and you increase it, you're almost like a bullwhip. That arm just comes along for the ride and it looks effortless. But we saw a comparison in lower stability and working on that lateral drive. And this pitcher went to the University of Washington and was drafted last year in the amateur draft for Major League Baseball. So we're looking at anything above about producing force more than 65% of your body weight with your lower half puts a lot less stress on your arm. Again, just some tests we can do. with baseball. With any sport really is body sway, squat with the dowel behind the head, counter movement, jump, squat, jump on a lateral bound are always good tests to kind of start painting a good picture with how you produce ground reaction forces, and then just thinking outside of the box with a specific sport, like a swing or a towel drill or a golf swing or a volleyball player doing trying to block a ball or anything that I can think of that I can see applicable. I'll try it out and see if it gives me information or not. Due to the short amount of time, I had to cut this presentation down a little bit. There's a lot more information I have. Worked with over thousands of athletes and I have 9,000 or so readings just with the Mars, and then even more with the BioWare on different things. So yeah, I mean, I hope you guys took something away from this. Sorry, sorry I had to rush through some of that at the end there, but I know a few of you have to get somewhere. So this is my information. My Gmail, my Nationals email, my phone number, and that's Will Lehmann's email.
So if anyone has a question they want to ask Will, instead of everyone speaking maybe all at once, if you send it in the chat to myself real quick, and I'll read the question out loud and get Will's response. So just want to take a quick minute there. If nothing comes in, we'll continue, but just want to give an opportunity for everyone to ask a question if they have one. Yeah, so yeah, I guess if you have any questions, yeah, please feel free to email Will. You can contact Will, his contact information he sent out. But if you have any questions about Kistler force plates or software that you want to ask myself or Florian, is our emails. If you're from Europe or Middle East, you can contact Florian. From the US or Canada, you can contact myself. As my email here. So looks like we're at the end of our presentation, the webinar today. So there will be another webinar coming up for our series. The details will be announced later this week. But yeah, we thank everyone for your time today, and hope you stay safe and healthy and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.